Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Talos of Tech, live on Twitch, on schedule. I feel good. I'm optimizing my time better, getting vlogs up, getting live streamers up. Welcome back to another episode of Drew Doesn't Know What He's Talking About, because I have done a little bit more research since our last live stream, which hasn't gone up to the Tailosive podcast channel yet. It probably will later today. But the hilarious thing about that last podcast is that it's probably, not podcast, the last live stream, is that it's pretty much all dated now because I've learned so much more since the last talk that I've realized the discussion really comes down to why does the App Store, and Apple in particular, treat video games differently from movies, TV shows, books, music, all things that Apple allows on their platform from third parties, even though Apple has their own in-house option. And once again, I will not budge on the fact that I don't think this is an Apple Arcade issue, but it does come down to the App Store not being specific, Apple not providing good enough reasons. I essentially can understand what they're trying to do, but overall, I think they're messing it up, and I don't think they're doing it right. And I think they could be doing a much better job to help Microsoft or to help other companies who want to make game streaming a thing on iOS. But I understand the hesitation because it can potentially set a very dangerous precedent. I've also looked into Shadow, which was brought up a few times. I'd never heard of Shadow on the previous stream. Now I know what it is. It basically lets you rent a desktop PC from some server somewhere, and from your iPhone or iPad, you can access it remotely. And you rent that PC, but it's not something you have on your own local. It's not like Steam Link, which is basically just streaming your gaming PC Steam window to your iOS device, which is a remote desktop client, which I guess Apple is okay with remote desktops because they're making it obvious that you are clearly accessing a different device. You are accessing a separate platform and using your iOS device through that. So I suppose when you make that obvious, Apple doesn't mind when you buy games or go through other platforms to access different apps, because Shadow and Steam Link make it abundantly clear you are remotely accessing a different device. And I suppose xCloud really isn't doing that. xCloud is trying to present multiple games and apps as if they're running on the device when, well, they're not running on the device, but they're pitching it essentially as you open this app and it has a library of different games to choose from. And the best counter argument that a lot of people are bringing this up. Oh, hey, Liquid Retina, thank you for the Twitch Prime. Almost at 2 years. Can I get a chonk in the chat? That's why everyone was saying chonk. Okay, that makes sense. Chonk in the chat for Liquid Retina. Thank you for the support. Essentially, because xCloud is not being presented as a remote access, it's streaming the games directly from Microsoft servers. It's not saying you are remotely accessing your Xbox, or you're not renting some Xbox access on Microsoft's end. It's not like a remote desktop viewer. This is a direct, we're streaming the game directly from our server to this device. And the best counter argument that a lot of people have for that is, how is this different from Netflix, essentially? Because Netflix, you download an app, you have a subscription, and through that subscription, you get to watch content that is streaming to the device. Okay, that would be, you could make the argument that is a TV Plus competitor. I mean, it's not really even an argument. It is a TV Plus competitor. They're totally different titles on there, and Apple's hoping that you like the TV Plus subscription, so you will keep paying for it, just like Netflix. But they can coexist, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's not like you have to choose one over the other. I don't think there's that many people that are like, well, I can only subscribe to one. I can't subscribe to both. I think most people who are into movies and TV shows would be the type to just subscribe to both if they can. Or the reason they wouldn't subscribe to TV Plus is not because Netflix is better. It's because TV Plus doesn't have something they're interested in. So I don't necessarily see them as unable to coexist, which is why I don't believe in the argument that the reason Apple can't allow xCloud is because it bumps up against Apple Arcade. They can coexist, just like Apple Music and Spotify can coexist. Yeah, well, Avnub's getting to my point, but I'll read your message anyway. The main problem why Apple doesn't allow game streaming is because they see games as apps, not entertaining content like music or videos. That's why Apple sees cloud gaming services as a bypass to their App Store. They act, in effect, as an alternative app store. It's a fundamental misunderstanding that is very disingenuous. I guess that's the debate, because the argument can be made, I think, somewhat fairly. Thank you for the 20 bits, Pizza Man. That, at least with the way Apple distributes games and apps in media on their App Store, they do treat games differently. You don't download the Greyhound app, you don't download the Morning Show app as own separate apps, and you download one piece of app on your home screen just for one show. No, you have all of your media that you sit back and relax and enjoy, whether it's a movie or TV show or music. You just kind of select it and it plays. Whereas gaming, because it's interactive, or maybe because it's more in depth, Apple has just decided that games should be treated differently. That's why on the App Store you download one game. That I know of, there's not really a bunch of apps on the App Store that you download, and inside that game there's a bunch of separate games that are treated as individual apps. And I guess that's what xCloud is treating their games like. You open this app, and then there's more apps to choose from. Now, like I said before, I don't think Apple is necessarily worried directly about Microsoft and their games. Those would probably be fine. But Apple also knows they can't make exceptions for certain big tech companies because of the antitrust committee. They don't want to get accused of big tech collaborating and making exceptions for each other, which is anti-competitive for smaller companies. So the rules and the guidelines that they set for Microsoft also have to apply to everyone. So if they let xCloud on the App Store, that means some other company can be like, hey, we have a cloud game streaming service, and other game devs can optimize apps and put them on our gaming cloud service, and they don't have to get approved from the App Store. They don't have to take the 30% cut. They can go through us, and then we'll bring it to the iOS platform. That would be kind of bad, and kind of allow for, because the iOS app Store is huge. It's a huge platform. There's so many people on it in the first place. Apple Arcade is not a streaming service. No, Apple Arcade is a monthly subscription that grants you access to a certain library of games that are no in-app purchases, no ads. They can't charge extra on top of the service as is. xCloud is more like streaming the gameplay. It's more like GeForce Now, or it's streaming the gameplay to your device, but the gameplay is not actually running on your device. And to be fair, Apple Arcade is different because you do have to download the games for them to run. And to be fair, when the App Store was created, cloud gaming like xCloud was not really a thing. This was all kind of new. So the guidelines weren't really set up for this type of media. And I do think they need to be updated. I'm not trying to say Apple is completely innocent here. All I'm saying is that they need to be more clear with their guidelines on what is and isn't okay. Roblox is. I think because Roblox is one game, it's not trying to be an alternative app store. I mean, there's mini games within a game, but that's not what xCloud is. They don't apply things to everyone. Lots of devs want to make apps with user-generated content, but can't, even though YouTube and Twitch allow for that content. Well, again, I think they're treating video content as separate from gaming. And we can make the argument that it shouldn't be. I can understand that viewpoint because at the end of the day, it's all media, it's all entertainment, right? So why not allow games to be streamed? That argument can be made. If they allow Netflix a streaming service, in order to be fair, they need to let in tiny streaming services in the App Store as well. I don't see a difference between xCloud and Netflix when it comes to allowing streaming services or not. Well, oh my God, what happened? Sorry, a cloud went in front of the freaking window. I'm gonna turn a light on here. 1 second. That's the debate, though. Games versus movies. Why are they treated differently? 1 sec. I gotta plug it in. Let me see if that helps. It's just a video stream. If you allow games to be streamed, you can input credit card information through the stream game's payment method without going through Apple Pay, because it's all just a video stream. I suppose that's a little bit different because the game is interactive. I mean, Apple could just make a guideline in the App Store that just says you can't do that. You can't ask for billing information through that. And I think more so it is that games are... Apple doesn't want to regulate content, basically. They don't care too much that if there's a Netflix show that's R-rated or has adult content in it, they don't need to analyze. They don't need to look at each individual show. They don't want to approve media so much. But with games, they do. They want to be able to look through the game and make sure there's nothing breaking their rules, that kind of thing. And I've seen it played both ways, to be honest. I've seen several people bring up that games are interactive and they take up more space on the device, and because people are comfortable with that and they're used to games being separate apps, not individual, they're not used to downloading one app as a platform that lets you access other games, because that hasn't really been done on the App Store before. That's why Apple is treating it differently, because, again, the counter argument is just, what's the difference between Netflix and xCloud? Same thing, right? Not exactly. The argument could be made they aren't the same thing. Thank you, Anonymous Cheer. Appreciate it. Movies are passive media, but game streaming is active media. You don't open xCloud to then have it open in the background while doing something else. True. You mean launchers aren't allowed on the App Store? Kind of. It's not any launcher. I mean, you can make the argument that TV Plus and Netflix and Hulu are launchers because you open them and then you choose the content you want to choose from. Passive media versus active media. I guess that argument could be made. The question is why, though? Why is Apple concerned? And I think if Apple does want to put their foot down and say, no, we don't want to ever allow game streaming, we don't want to ever allow certain apps to be considered alternative app stores, because, again, if Microsoft can do it, everyone can do it. What they could be worried about is people bypassing the App Store guidelines or bypassing Apple's revenue cut, which, it's a big portion of their services revenue is the money they make through the App Store. And that's a whole different debate. Some people think they make way too much money through the App Store and the cut should be reduced. Other people say it's totally fair if you consider the Play Store also has a 30% cut. Most platforms take a cut of whatever revenue is generated. Twitch does it. YouTube does it. It's very common in the industry for the platform to take a cut of the revenue. And 30% is actually pretty standard. In fact, certain platforms like YouTube take 45% of creators' earnings. So consider that. 30% is pretty average. It's not that insane. I don't think Apple Arcade is a competitor here because, again, it's an exclusives battle. It's not. Apple Arcade is not a streaming service. Apple Arcade is download, work on the device, and they hope that you keep paying for Arcade because of the games on there being good. They're not. You can't get those Apple Arcade games on xCloud, so xCloud's not really a threat. Same way Netflix and TV Plus can coexist. You can have people pay for both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe just say it's only for games, no duplicating apps that are already on the App Store. Well, that's the thing, though, is that even in the game section, Apple makes billions of dollars a year off of the games on the App Store. And if they set a precedent that basically allowed people to have a workaround where it's like, okay, now let's make up an example. It doesn't have to be a big tech company. It doesn't have to be Microsoft. Let's just say it's company X. All right, that's our template name, okay? This is an unknown company you guys haven't heard of before. It's just for the sake of the example. Company X decides we want to have games that iOS users can play on, right? And we want to be able to reimburse the games and the game devs that design for our platform on Company X, and they don't want to follow the App Store guidelines. They don't want to have to take the 30% revenue from the App Store cut. They don't want to play by Apple's rules, but they want to play on Apple's platform. They want to be on iOS and the iPad. So Company X launches their app that allows cloud gaming so that you can stream those games to the device, bypassing the App Store. And you just have to sign up for Company X by going to a browser. So you don't have to... The app itself is free. You don't have to take a 30% cut because opening the app is free. You just have to log in, which means you sign up on the website for $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever, and now millions or thousands, tons of game devs basically start building games and optimizing them for Company X. Now, all these game devs can bypass the App Store rules, can bypass the Apple Store cut, and just go straight to the big platform. So now Apple loses out on that revenue. Apple doesn't get to collect that, and they don't get to approve the game. So if there's adult content or controversial content, hateful content that Apple's not okay with, all of that gets to go on the iOS platform and the iPad platform. because they said, well, Microsoft gets to do it with xCloud, so why can't we do it? So there's a few, that's a very black and white example. Obviously, there are some guidelines they could put in place, like if the gaming streaming service allows you to access certain content, if it allows you to access adult content, then we shut down the streaming app, and then it's not approved anymore. But even then, even if the games are all family friendly and they're not hateful and they're not controversial, it's still a big workaround for people to get access to Apple's huge iOS app market, while at the same time not having to pay for the revenue cut, which could hurt Apple long term financially. It could be a money reason. And I agree, yes, Apple can do whatever they want. It's their platform. I just think the argument can be made that by Apple not coming to an agreement with Microsoft and Apple not allowing xCloud, a lot of people might choose not to buy iPhones or iPads, because this is a pretty cool feature. I like the idea of being able to play games on the go with what device you have. You know, I'm for xCloud being on the App Store. I'm not against it. I'm trying to play devil's advocate a little bit just to say, why is Apple not okay with it? Why are they putting their foot down? Where's the hypocrisy and where's the concern for a dangerous precedent? And I can see both. Apple could potentially face hardware sales loss if there's a bunch of people that are like, well, I really like xCloud and that's only on Android. It gives people an incentive to switch to Android, which can potentially hurt Apple to not have it. Can't they just make it like how other apps have in-app purchases where if you buy anything, then you pay with your iTunes account? They could, but the cloud gaming thing can allow people to bypass that really easily, Yusuf, because you can just say, well, if you want to buy something, you have to go on the website. Maybe they could put in a rule that says they're not allowed to require an external subscription, but then Microsoft probably wouldn't be interested. I don't know if that rule would allow xCloud in. If Apple's argument against xCloud is that they would have to allow sketchy game streaming services, why do they allow Netflix, which forces them to allow tiny random streaming services? Again, because they treat games differently from movies. Again, if you want to go the route, if you want to put your foot down and just say movies and games should be treated equally, then yeah, Apple's just being a hypocrite and this makes no sense. That argument ends very quickly. But my point is Apple is not treating them the same because they've been distributed differently since the beginning of the App Store. Because you can't, there's no rule saying you can't come up with your own streaming service that's tiny and sketchy from Netflix and put it on the App Store. I mean, as long as it still follows the App Store guidelines, you can do that. It may not be super successful, but again, Apple doesn't see the need to review content. They don't see the need to review movies, TV shows on the service. There might be a few exceptions of extreme adult content where they draw the line, but for the most part, if it's just streaming music and movies, they don't care. They don't want to analyze that content. The games they do, because they treat those differently, because it's active media, not passive media. Movies, TV shows, music, those kinds of things are more passive. I guess there's a few exceptions because you have like Bandersnatch on Netflix with interactive, but for the most part, it's still TV and movies. I think Apple just doesn't want to deal with xCloud since Microsoft is buying games on their website and isn't going through Apple. I suppose so. I think a lot of it comes from what it could allow people to bypass. It would essentially allow people to not have to approve their apps for the App Store, which, as we've seen, has been a bumpy road for a lot of people. They have to follow certain guidelines and certain rules and get this 30% cut. And Apple doesn't want to lose that, essentially. They don't want people to be able to go around that. The comparison of Netflix and Microsoft xCloud is not a good comparison. You download games on iOS through the App Store only, but you cannot download movie through the App Store because they're a different type of media. That's true. Games are part of the App Store, not iTunes. Whereas iTunes is where you get movies and TV shows. So from the beginning, when it comes to distribution, Apple has always treated games separately from movies and TV. So to be honest, they're kind of treating it differently. To be honest, they're kind of being consistent here. I know it feels hypocritical, but for the most part, Apple from the beginning has treated games as an app and movies and TV shows as just a form of passive media. Example, Linus's float plane are trying to do something, but their app doesn't work because 30% cut is impossible to do when most of the revenue goes to the creators. It breaks a lot of business models. It does. I know that. And there's also that 30% cut means that if you sign up with YouTube Premium on the iOS app, it costs more than if you sign up through the website or sign up via Android because they don't have to worry about that cut. So it does allow / not allow certain things, but also the Play Store has a lot crappier apps than the App Store. So Apple needs to split Arcade into its own thing like iTunes. Arcade has nothing to do. I still think people are over exaggerating the importance of Arcade in this involvement. I really don't think it has anything to do with it. It's more so the App Store as a whole. Arcade has so little to do with xCloud, in my opinion. Thank you for the 100 bits, Cyberplays. Hello. I tried to do YouTube Premium. It was too expensive. Yeah, it is kind of pricey now. Back when I signed up for it, it was a lot cheaper. And also, I sell it out to some friends and family, so it's extra cheap for me. So when I signed up for YouTube Premium, you could get 6 accounts on a family plan for $15 a month. 6 separate Gmails, 6 different people. So I signed up for that program. I rented out to my cousin, my cousin's wife, and my sister. So that's 3 people that reimbursed me $3 a month. And then me and my wife get YouTube Premium through that same plan. So it ends up costing me and my wife $6 a month for no ads on YouTube and access to YouTube Music, all that stuff. So yeah, that was when I signed up for it. That was a good deal. Now, if we canceled it, we couldn't get that offer back. So I will never cancel it pretty much. Let's see. Predicting now, Apple buys Lucid Motors. That would be cool. I think Apple is releasing too much iPhones now. It could confuse some customers. Why not keep it to one iPhone like what Steve Jobs did? If we kept it to one iPhone, then the iPhone 11 and 10R wouldn't exist. Food for thought. Diversity in a lineup can be somewhat good. There's a delicate balance between having lots of options for people, because the truth is smartphones are extremely popular. They're still Apple's best-selling product, and there's millions, if not billions, of people on the planet that use smartphones now, and acting like you can only have 1 or 2 that cover everybody's use cases is ridiculous. It's just not true. There's some people that want small phones, some people want big phones, some people want cheap phones, some people like premium phones with premium features. Some people want a really good camera, some people want a really good display, some people just want it to last for 6 years. There's all kinds of different priorities for people that if you want to act like there's one size that fits all, it's just not true. So yes, it does get a little bit confusing when Apple decides to have 4 or 5 iPhones in 1 year, but because that's the largest user base, it kind of makes sense to have lots of different options. But you can go too far, I agree. Samsung, in my opinion, goes a little too far. And OnePlus, they have way too many phones. I don't think the OnePlus 8 needed to exist. They should have called the 8 Pro the 8 and then just done the Nord stuff. And Samsung has like 3 different series of phones and 21 phones in total. Like, they make way too many phones. It's too complicated. I hacked your password. It's AppleLover941. Thank you, Cyberplace, for revealing my password. Appreciate the bits. Good luck hacking me, everyone. This is Apple being extremely annoying. You don't have to defend them for BS. They do. Well, someone's got to do it. I can understand it, though. Frankly, like I've said, I will only defend Apple when I think they're in the right. I didn't defend them on the Wheels thing, or the Mac Pro, or the Pro Display XDR. There's a whole video I made talking about Apple products I don't like and things I don't defend them for. So it's not that I call myself the Apple sheep, but genuinely, I will only defend them when I think they have a case. And this not allowing xCloud on the App Store thing, I don't think is that crazy. I've seen them be crazier and do more pettier things. Like suing the fruit company for having a pear logo. That I can't get behind. I'm like, what? What? Why are we doing this? The $700 Mac Pro wheels, those are stupid. Yes, I watched MKBH's videos on establishing a luxury brand and sending an image of brand loyalty. No, that was all bullcrap. I don't believe it. It doesn't follow. Apple is not the same as Supreme. I don't care if they're trying the same tactics of Supreme. It's not the same thing. But this was a really interesting story to dive into that I still feel like I'm inexperienced and don't know much about. So I'm hesitant to make a video about it because, again, I'll probably get 5 or 6 response videos and 1 million dislikes because typically when I try to help people understand both sides of the story, everyone just assumes, oh, you're siding with Apple. You don't want there to be xCloud. You think Apple's in the right. No, I'm just trying to give perspective. I'm just trying to make the argument of here's why they're hesitant and here's why they should change. Because I personally think it would be great if xCloud was on iOS. I think it would be awesome. But it can set a precedent, so I can understand why they're hesitant. Let's see. Movies and music are essentially single files of content. Games are apps with thousands of lines of code, and allowing them without review is dangerous. That's the user-facing argument. Actually, I believe that money is the more accurate answer. I can see that, though. I mean, Apple needs money to survive. All companies do. Acting like companies just care about money is like me telling you all you care about is air. It's true. If we took away air from you right now, you would be very concerned. But you can care about more than one thing. You know, Apple cares about the environment. They care about making the world a better place, making products better for people, more accessible to people with disabilities, you know, improving our lives with tools that I use every single day. They can't do all of these milestones. They can't be the company they want to be without money. So it is important for them to keep, especially as they're trying to become more of a services company and rely more on services revenue than they are hardware revenue. I can understand them wanting to protect the App Store's revenue. I get that. It makes sense. That's a big part of their income. Just like you want to make sure you can breathe, you know, as a human being. A company is not a person. That's the important thing to remember here. A company is an organization, a group of people that is providing services or products to people and paying their employees, paying money to make those products or services a reality. They need money. That's how a company is alive. Do you remember your password, or do you use Keychain? Asked Cyberplay. I don't like how many password questions you're asking. But no, I don't use Keychain. I have my passwords, long strings of numbers and code, memorized up here based on phrases and expressions. Let's see. The suing the logo is because of how outdated trademark law is. If you don't actively defend it, you lose it, so Apple is taking no chances. I know, it just looks bad. I've heard that argument made as well. Maybe if they were worried if a company somehow figured out how to stream not just games but also normal apps, they could build a separate app store. It does... I don't think that's the problem, because Apple could very easily put that in the App Store guidelines. Like, you can't... They could just say, okay, cloud game streaming is okay, just don't make separate apps through that app store. I could see that. Let's see. Just saw your latest video. I hope so. Tim Apple, watch your video and listen to you. Oh, thank you. I hope so too. I like my idea. I like the idea of simplifying the Mac lineup, so it's just MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, iMac, iMac Pro, Mac Mini, Mac Pro. Just simple, the portable version, the powerful version. That'd be great. Apple can lose their logo. If they don't actively defend the trademark, yeah, they can lose it. So I guess that's why they have to be more lawsuit wary of like fruit companies with logos like that. What are your uses of HomeKit? It's one of my favorite parts of the Apple ecosystem, but I don't see you talk about it much. There's not much to talk about. I don't really do much with HomeKit. My security cameras aren't HomeKit supportive. Because I wasn't really into this whole smart home thing back when I bought all my security cameras, so they don't work with that. All I really use HomeKit for is light bulbs. So when I walk into my office, I can just go up to Siri and say, tech video, and then the lights turn on. Or if I want to end the day and I'm done working, I can just say, turn off the lights, and then give it a second. I think it heard me say, and then usually it takes like 3 seconds. Now it doesn't want to do it. Perfect. iPad 8th in September. Yeah, I figured. I'm done with my daily Wii Sports session. I can now sit down and enjoy your stream. Okay, good. Glad we're done with the Wii Sports session. Okay. Turn off the lights. Oh, it's because I turn off the Wi-Fi on my phone. That's why I didn't want to do it. Usually I'm connected to the Wi-Fi, but I turn off the Wi-Fi because I'm streaming. Let me try one more time. Turn off the lights. There we go. That's usually how long it takes. Normally I don't have to say it 3 times. But typically when I walk into my office, I go, tech video, and then everything lights up, which is nice. All right, that's it. Okay, about Apple Silicon Macs. I think the MacBook Pro 13-inch and the 24-inch iMac share a chip active cooling. The MacBook Air gets nearly an iPad chip passive cooling, and the MacBook Pro 16-inch and 32-inch iMac gets a crazy powerful SoC. Maybe a module for the Mac Pro and the user can run on both systems, Intel and SoC. Ooh, I don't know how well that could work. I'm not exactly sure how compatible those are at the same time, but I don't know. It really comes down to the fact that we don't really know much about these chips. We're hearing about them coming, and we're hearing about what screen size they're going to be, but we really don't have an idea how hot they get and how fast they get. So your pitch might make more sense if they're able to make a low power, very cool chip for the MacBook Air, but they want to get extreme performance into the 13-inch, so they need fans for that one. But I'm still in the gate of I think they're going to do it similar to the iPad lineup, where you basically have your standard chip, which is good performance, doesn't need a fan, and then your high-end chip, which can use a fan, but you get extreme performance out of it. We'll see. Cloud apps already exist. They're called web apps. I think that's a little different, though, because they're not alt app stores. That was not my intent. We'll refrain from the password question. Thank you for the 100 bits, Matt. You have no power here. I know. iPad mini looks good, the leaked minimal bezel one. I'm excited for that one. I don't want the iPad mini to die. I kind of hate how neglected it gets. I want more iPad minis in my life. Stadia and xCloud working through the web with Safari support would be cool. I don't know if it would run that well, but I think it's possible they could do that. I don't think Apple can stop Microsoft from making a mobile web browser that supports gaming. Yeah, they couldn't really do that. I don't think it would run that well, though. To be fair. Do you think Apple should ditch the Max branding on the iPhone lineup because the Apple Watch isn't Apple Watch and Apple Watch Max, for example? What? Red Leader? Apple Watch isn't Apple Watch? What do you mean? Yes, it is. No, I think Max is fine. I don't think they need to ditch the Max branding because they've clearly shown that Plus is for services now. They don't want to use Plus for hardware anymore. So in that sense, Max makes sense. You're taking a phone to the Max. It's short. It's easy to say. Looks good on branding. Looks good in commercials and that kind of thing. So he means there's no Apple Watch Max. You don't need a Max on everything. There's no iPad Max either. That would have been a better example. But they probably just don't want people calling it MaxiPad. Which could happen if you called it the Max iPad. But no, I'm fine with Max. I mean, the naming scheme for iPhone has been destroyed years ago. It's long past the form of logic. Ever since we got into 10R territory, it doesn't make any sense anymore. When do you think the Smart Home Universal Standard is coming out? Oh yeah, they're partnering, aren't they? I don't know. Maybe next year or something like that. I don't know. Let's see. You said that you don't like how Samsung not just has too many flagship/budget phones, so how would you like Samsung phone lineup to be? You know, I really don't know it that closely because I'm not a Samsung fan, so I don't pay uber close attention to all their phones. I mainly follow the flagship stuff. But I already brought it up in my Samsung video. There's two phones in their lineup currently that don't need to exist. For one, the S20 Ultra. I bought that. I reviewed that. Is stupid. The camera is supposed to be better than the S20 and S20 Plus, and yet it ended up being worse because of how bumpy that 108 megapixel sensor was. The zoom thing was stupid. The screen is way too big. It doesn't need to exist. It should have just been S20, S20 Plus. That would have been plenty. That would have been fine. They didn't need that Ultra. And now, with the Note 20 and the Note 20 Ultra, that $1,000 plastic Note 20 is a joke. The specs on it are terrible for the price, and the fact that it's made of plastic is just an instant turnoff for everyone. They didn't need two. You didn't need to have two Note 20s. You could have just had the one Ultra one, because that one seems to be pretty good. The battery's good. The camera's pretty good. The display's nice. So you could have had a very solid lineup if you just did S20, S20 Plus, Note 20 Ultra, and just make it so if you want the biggest phone, you get an S Pen with it. Okay? You don't need two separate big phones, one without an S Pen, one with an S Pen. I don't think two of those phones out of the 5 in their flagship line needed to exist. None of the foldables need to exist. I'd get rid of all of those. But it's Samsung. They like doing their thing. When it comes to the J series and the A series and the M series, I don't know them by name. I don't follow those very closely. But I'm sure there's probably more than enough. There's probably too many in the first place. Why is there an Ultra phone? The Note is supposed to be the Ultra. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought the Note was supposed to be the even better phone than the S20, but now there's the cheaper version of the, and then there's the S20 Lite and the Note 20 Lite. Ugh, there's too many. It's too complicated. Too many phones don't need to exist. Do you think 11S would be a better name? No. It doesn't make sense to call it an S year if we're getting new form factors, new designs, and new screen sizes. That's not an S year. S year is when the outside is basically the same. You just got better internals. That's all. Here's the Android versus iPhone argument summed up in 2 sentences. Android supports emulators, can play Wii Sports. iPhone doesn't support emulators, cannot play Wii Sports. I like that logic. iPhone can't do Wii Sports. Android can do Wii Sports. Case closed. Apple's stocks dropped to 0. Apple is doomed. Oh my god. If you're talking about the 12, it's getting too many new features and the new design is enough to warrant a new name. Yeah, they wouldn't call it S if it was a completely new design with new form factors. Is iPhone XS a good iPhone in 2020? It's fine if you can get it for a good deal. Please look up Victoria's Pear Pad. I don't have to look that up. I watched Victoria's when I was a kid. And also I've watched it with my little sister-in-law not too long ago. She wanted to watch something. She liked Victoria's. That was a couple months ago. Yeah, those things are hilarious. I always wish Apple would make something like that. The Pear Pads on that show were like 27 inches. Those kids were walking around with like 30-inch tablets. They would just sit and swipe on them and stuff like that. I thought it was hilarious. My mother-in-law has been on Note phones forever. She wasn't a fan of the direction of Note last year. Then when she saw this year's announcement of that plastic Note, she went and got an iPhone 11 that day. Oh, can she get it back, Zach? It's kind of a bad time to get an iPhone 11. I would have told her to wait a couple more months. And I watched iCarly, yes. iCarly is pretty much the reason we're all here, to be fair. I wouldn't have tried to become a YouTuber if it weren't for iCarly. I know that sounds cringy and embarrassing, but it's the truth. I didn't have any brothers, okay? I had 2 older sisters growing up, and all they wanted to watch, well, my closest older sister, the one that's only 3 years old. My 6-year older sister is not that interested, but Emily just wanted to watch iCarly all the time, so that's pretty much what we watched. And there was that Freddy guy with the camera, and Spencer was always funny with the tacos and my light-up socks, whoa! So he was always kind of wacky. When you're a kid, it's entertaining, it's fun, and I like the idea that you could just in your own home have an internet show that people watch, and you do that for a living. I thought that was the coolest thing, so that's why I wanted to become a YouTuber. You the youngest and the only boy, I'm sorry. Oh, it's okay. It paid off. It made me very good at talking with the ladies. Let's put it that way. Because I was good at talking with females on the regular, being at home all day, whereas I had other friends that didn't have any sisters and they didn't know how to talk to girls. So, I was good at it. What do you think of OnePlus phones? They're fine. iCarly and Victorious are in the same universe? Yes, they are. They've had several crossovers. Wasn't there a sequel show called Sam and Cat as well? I think it only lasted 1 season. It was spaghetti tacos. Get your facts straight. I'm sorry, I haven't watched it in forever. I haven't heard anyone talk about the reason I think Samsung made the standard Note 20. As someone who has worked in construction contraction, and with that being one of the 2 markets for the Note, I think every decision they made on the phone was specifically to make it better for contractors. So why the plastic, though? I don't get it. No one should... If you're in the market for the Note 20, you should just buy the Note 10. We do not talk about Sam and Cat. We do not talk about that. Oh my god. I told her she could have my wife's 11 and we upgraded to 12, but she turned in her note and got a good deal. Well, okay, you could have turned in your note when the 12 came out, though. Ariana and the blonde one fought, so they stopped it. Oh god. No. By the time Sam and Cat came out, I kind of grew out of Nickelodeon. I'm watching on Amazon Prime behind me, guys. Oh, 100 bits from Cyberplace. Thank you. Says, I went to the Apple store when I was 5 or something. I went to the Apple store. They said that they did not have an iPad that size, and I cried. I got an iPad 2 that day. Crying as you walk out of the Apple store with your iPad. With your $100 bills. No. Why don't you have a tablet that big? Imagine how easy that tablet would bend. You know, a 13-inch iPad Pro bends easy. Imagine if it was like 30 inches. People defending the Note Plastic say it's better because it's more durable. Well, why didn't they do it on the Ultra? Yeah, exactly. It would have been one thing if they made it plastic on both because of their... But they didn't bring it up during the event. They did not want you knowing it was plastic. I don't think that was the purpose. If you want it to be more durable, they, put a case on it. Just get a Note 10 at that point. I don't know anyone... What does the Note 20 have over the last Note 10, which is probably $500 now? Probably 5G. That's about it. Oh, yeah, it was gender fluid plastic. I forgot. Gender fluid plastic. That's very different. I hate my masculine plastic. Still rocking my iPhone 7. It's handling iOS 14 beta surprisingly well. That's good. I always laughed when there were certain videos of, I would do certain videos about the next iPhone because that's honestly all there really is to talk about right now. There's not a whole lot of tech news outside of the iPhone 12 and Apple Silicon. And I'll upload lots of videos on the new iPhone and people be like, don't care, my iPhone 7 still works fine. I'm like, why did you click on the video? It's the equivalent of walking up to someone's door, knocking repeatedly, and then when they answer the door say, I don't like spending time with you. Why are you here? Just go away if you don't want to watch it. Just don't click on it. It's that easy. Just saying they wanted to bring as much from the Note 20 Ultra to the Note 20 as possible. And how much more expensive can glass be? I don't get it either. Usually, if you're switching to plastic, you're saving pennies on the dollar. It's not something you'd see on a $1,000 phone. Typically, it's something you see when they're trying to make something like the Pixel 4a, where it's like $300, $400 phone. Here's my iPhone upgrade strategy. Hold on to it as long as possible and then get the latest iPhone and you feel like a crazy big upgrade. Wow. Avnub, that's a big brain strategy. I think that's what most people do in the first place. Yeah, I think most people do that anyway. But yeah, that's a decent strategy, I guess. Some people always like waiting for the next iteration. You can come up with as many excuses as you want. I mean, you can make the argument that I buy the iPhone when it gets a new design, so it looks like the latest iPhone for the longest amount of time, or people will wait for the second or third iteration of that design to say, well, I got the best version of this design, so it'll last me the longest. You can come up with any number of excuses as why you got that one. Let's see. iOS 14 beta has been extremely buggy on my iPhone 8. I get a ton of app crashes every day. Dang it, that's not good. Matt donated again, says, would it be appropriate to say to someone respectfully, I think you're an incompetent idiot? I think so, because I said respectfully in the front. No, don't do that to anybody. That's rude. I do think the standard note should have been a lot cheaper, though. This says a lot about how expensive 5G is, right? If they make a plastic phone and it's still $1,000. I don't think Samsung has that high a profit margin, to be honest, because smartphone sales are not the majority of their revenue. Most of their revenue still comes from manufacturing contracts and working with other companies and building displays for them. That's SSD sales and processors and that kind of thing. That's where Samsung gets most of their money. So I don't think the profit margin is very high on those phones. I think the parts that go into them are just actually that expensive. They don't care anymore. They don't make much profit anymore, but they have state funding, so why even bother? Innovation! Yeah, I guess that's part of it. Why is the watered down Note still $1,000? $1,000 used to be the top end. Now Samsung is selling a glorified Note 10 Lite with the 865 Plus for that price. You're forgetting 5G. It matters. It's expensive. I'm pretty sure it's millimeter wave, right? And Snapdragon chips. Yeah, those are expensive. But can you play Wii Sports on the Note 20? I didn't think so. You can invite one day Marquez and make a live show together. I don't have anything interesting to ask him in the first place. We've had big YouTubers come on live before, and that usually not that many people show up in the first place. Who would you trust more with your data, Apple or Google? Probably Apple, because they don't sell the data, whereas Google does sell that data. They build a profile on you. They're very upfront about that. Apple doesn't have revenue coming in from data profiles on people, whereas Google does. How come you don't do Taylosive talks in 4K at 60? Can't your iPhone do 4K at 60 on the front? It can. I'm surprised someone actually noticed that because I've stopped doing it recently. I used to do every vlog at 4K at 60, but I've recently stopped because either there's a software issue with Final Cut, or I've seen people bring it up in live streams in the past where it has something to do with the CPU and the GPU from my iMac Pro being from 2017. And basically, I think they're not as good at encoding the H.264 codec that the 4K at 60 records at, because when I do 4K at 60 on my iPhone and I try to edit it in Final Cut, it's laggy, it's choppy, I can barely watch 3 seconds without it dropping frames, and it becomes very, very hard to edit videos. And because it's so choppy and encoded, it slows me down, and it makes making vlogs for that channel a lot harder, so I just decided, you know what? Most people don't watch it 4K. It's a smartphone video, so it's compressed anyway. The difference between 1080 and 4K is barely noticeable. It's overkill for the tech channels. And really the main reason I do it for 265, whatever the codec is. I can't remember every number in the world. Really the reason I record at 4K for tech and EV is because I punch in a lot. There's a lot of cropping and zooming, and I don't want to lose data because I know most people are watching at 1080p. So if you record at 4K, you can punch in and not lose much data. With the vlogs, I rarely punch in. For the most part, vlogs are just filmed at an arm length distance. So I realized, you know what? Final Cut doesn't like 4K at 60. Maybe when I get a new Mac, it'll edit it fine. And if that's the case, then I will go back to 4K at 60. But for the time being, I think 1080 at 60 is fine for vlogging and smartphone video. So I film at that, and Final Cut handles it great. So I film at 1080 now, and there's no lag, there's no frame choppiness. I can edit videos way, way faster. And because of that, I'm able to get more vlogs up than before. So for that reason, for those reasons, I'm out, as they say on Shark Tank. So I'm putting 4K at 60 in vlogs on hold until they figure out the Final Cut bug or I get a new iMac, which should be within the year or so. Thank you for the 100 bits, Matt, who says, what would you say to Tim if you met him, and what if you met Samsung's CEO? You know, I know the Samsung CEO stepped down or something, so if I met the current CEO, I wouldn't even know it was him because I don't know who it is right now. But if I met Tim Cook, I don't know, it depends on the context. If I had like an hour with him, I would ask him questions about AR and future products and Apple Silicon and features I wish they would change and that kind of thing. I would ask really, like, I would want to make the between two ferns of tech interviews. Basically, if I interviewed Tim Cook, I'd be like, why are the wheels $700? You know, something funny like that. If I only had like 10 seconds and I ran into him at an Apple store or something, I would just be like, hey, I appreciate what you do and I think you're doing a great job with the company. And I'd just shake his hand or something like that. Something really nice and sweet and simple and respectful. Just be like, I think he's done a great job with Apple. And I would just want to thank him in person and just say, keep it up, Tim. You're an awesome guy. But if it was an interview, it would be awkward and funny and cringy. I would love it. There's no plans for new Taylosive merch. No, not really. I got nothing. If something hits me up there, I'll do it, but I can't think of anything. One of the reasons I think the Base Note 20 is overpriced is because it comes with millimeter wave 5G standard. The standard S20 doesn't, and they have to fit a slightly better processor and a pen. It focused on minor features that doesn't make a difference, and the compromises are more significant than the base S20. Yeah, I think that's well said, King Turtle. I think I agree. They got to put the pen in there, which obviously makes it more expensive, and the parts on the inside are crammed. Yeah, if we were still in the pandemic, I wouldn't shake his hand. When he asked if I'd met Tim Cook, I wasn't thinking like tomorrow. I was thinking like 5 years from now. I would bow. Thank you for what you do, Tim. I practice that in the mirror every night. What would I say? What would I say? Maybe ask if I could take his picture. Something like that. Thank you for uploading in 4K in the first place. I can tell the difference between 1080 and 4K. No problem. You should look into HDR, please. I haven't found a cheap or inexpensive or a reasonable justification for going into HDR. What cam do I use for the YouTube videos? I use the Blackmagic Ursa Mini. It's right off camera here. It's the big boy camera. This thing's big. So I use this for every tech and EV video. I bought it used. I didn't buy it new. It didn't come with the lens or the battery, so I had to buy those separately. It's a big chunk battery here. It shoots at 4K at 60, and it takes 2 CFast cards. This is a touch display on the inside that you interact with for recording and stuff. And it mainly stays on the tripod, and then the camera I'm using right now is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, which basically does everything this camera does, except it's very small. It's more like the size of a DSLR shooter, except it only does video. I don't think it does pictures. And it has an HDMI port on it, which makes it much better for live streaming, because I can just plug in an HDMI cable directly into this camera and feed that through a cam link into the Mac Mini. This actually is so old, it does not have a HDMI port, so I can plug this into a computer and use it as a webcam, but I have to use much different equipment that I have stored. An SDI output right here that I have to plug into, and then that has to go into a Blackmagic converter box, and that converts it into a data signal. And the thing about that converter box is that it only supports Thunderbolt 2, which is not USB-C. It's like the old shape of Thunderbolt. So I have to get a Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt 3 adapter. So basically, it's way more complicated, and SDI is not even as good as HDMI because this is limited to 1080 at 30. I can't go anything above that. Whereas the output on this camera, because it's newer and it's nicer, it does, I could output 4K at 60 if I wanted to. So, not that I'm going to, because Twitch doesn't really support it, and you can barely tell the difference on YouTube anyway, and it just makes your computer work way harder. It makes the bandwidth a lot more constrained, so it would be more laggy. However, if I wanted to, I could live stream at 4K at 60 from this camera, which would be really cool. Let's see. I think Apple Glass will really have a 16K display. No, I don't know. I don't know where that rumor came from. I think it'll have to be high resolution. I don't know if it'd be 16K. I didn't read that anywhere. How do you like 4K YouTube support on the iPhone? I haven't got it to work on everything yet. Where's my iPhone? I'm sitting on it. I can't do that with the 6 Plus. Let me try it again. I thought I updated all my apps yesterday. Let me see if it works. Yeah, it still doesn't work. At least on my videos. Even though I upload them at 4K at 60, it still caps out at 1080 at 60. So, yeah, I can't really... It only works on a few videos, not that many. Honestly, I don't think I'd notice it. I've had Android phones in the past that support 4K HDR on the YouTube app, and I don't. Unless you're specifically looking for it, you know, searching 4K HDR video 60 FPS, then you can see it. But when you're just watching average content, you don't really notice it. Xbox Series X is launching in November. Oh, goody. Let's see. Have you ever tried to film a Talos of Tech episode with your iPhone to see if people see the difference? No, but I know they would. I can guarantee you. You know, iPhone cameras are great. They're getting much better, but they're nowhere near what a Blackmagic or a professional grade camera can pump out. I have attempted. I didn't end up uploading it, but when I think back when the iPhone 8 Plus got a 4K 60 FPS camera, I recorded some videos on it. Compression and the sensors being that small, it's very noticeable. So if I switch to an iPhone, people would pick up on it right away. They said it will have an 8K display in each eye. That was most likely a prototype. I highly doubt they would do that on the production model, especially if it ends up costing $500, which now just seems more and more impossible. So yeah, I doubt it will be 8K. 5G is overhyped on the consumer side, but it's necessary for one of the sides to eventually break the cycle of having no capable devices and therefore lacking the incentive to build infrastructure. It's easy to incentivize mobile providers to expand the coverage to the public already demanding their coverage for phones they pay for. What? It's overhyped on the brand side. I don't see people in my day-to-day lives talking about how exciting 5G is, but I do see carriers advertising it nonstop. Also, they had plenty of incentive to expand the 4G LTE infrastructure, and they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to get on to the next G, so they could sell people more expensive phones or more expensive data plans. I don't understand how you could say it's hyped on the consumer side. I don't see a bunch of people on Twitter and YouTube saying, "Well, I wish my phone had 5G support." It's always like, "Oh, great, it has 5G. Who cares?" The 4G version of the Note 20 is still $1,056. Oof. Jeez. Let's see. What if you record all your videos with the S20 Ultra and 8K? I recorded a video at 8K on the vlogging channel. It looked terrible. That sensor was awful. For pictures as well, most of my photos doesn't need to be a super duper high quality. Would like it if Apple would enable easy photo size compression because my pictures eat a lot of 200 gigs iCloud account. There's probably some things you could do. You could probably turn off live photos. I bet that would save a lot of data. Turn off Smart HDR. That probably saves you some data. I don't know. Consumers are bombarded with ads for it when they don't actually benefit yet. I don't think they ever will, to be honest with you. The more I think about 5G, the more stupid I realize it is. We've had the ability for 4G and LTE to go well over 100 megabits per second into the 200, 300 zone. South Korea being a prime example. In South Korea, you can have LTE that goes way over 300 megabits. The reason is not that the technology is limited, it's that the coverage is limited. They don't put that many towers out. And they don't have the bandwidth at those towers to sustain everybody at a higher connection. So the 5G thing is just marketing, pretty much. Telling people that they're going to use 1,000 gigabit cellular. It's not true. Me pulling 5Gs in a rocket with no training about to die, but it's good because AT&T got confused and gave me the wrong 5G. 5G. Yeah, it's crazy fast when you're in direct line of sight of the tower. If you go behind a tree, it falls back down to LTE speeds. It's never going to be gigabit on the go. Like if you're in the car driving by the 5G tower, the window of the car will block the signal from being that strong. So those 1,000 gigabit speed tests that you see are almost never going to happen in the real world. And also, the people advertising 5G have completely made up use cases arguing why it's a bigger deal than it really is. Like, there's like, oh, 5G will allow for autonomous driving to be... There's no car company saying that in order for autonomous driving to work, we're going to need every car connected with a gigabit speed connection. No car company has said that. The car company closest to autonomy is Tesla, and they have admitted, rightfully, that if you want to have autonomous driving, it all has to be done, processed locally on the car itself. If you're talking about someday when every single car has a 5G connection, they're still probably going to be processing all that data locally, because there's all kinds of places we drive our cars where there's no service. There's all kinds of roads that'll probably never even see a 5G modem, because they never saw a 4G modem. A 4G tower, I mean. And they talk, oh, this will be revolutionary for robotic surgery and doctors and hospitals. They can use Wi-Fi. They've been using Wi-Fi. Are we making the argument that the doctor is going to perform robotic surgery from their smartphone in their car? Well, I think they'll be at home with gigabit Wi-Fi, which we already have. And the hospitals already have gigabit Wi-Fi. You don't need 5G for remote surgeries to take place. They're all a bunch of made-up examples that carriers keep saying, oh, this is what 5G will allow us to do. It'll allow cars to drive themselves. It'll allow surgeries to be revolutionary. Unless you're doing surgeries on the go, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. It doesn't make sense. The places the surgery and the doctor will be at will have Wi-Fi. I don't get it. 5G is dangerous. Why don't you think that? Oh, God. Do we have to go down that train again? It's not dangerous, people. It's just stupid. Why don't we just get good Wi-Fi instead of worrying about 5G on everywhere? Autonomous driving needs local processing with the ability to communicate with other autonomous cars. It doesn't necessarily need to communicate with the others. As someone who has looked really deep into autonomous driving technology, which Tesla has, how the car is able to drive itself almost has nothing to do with how the other cars are behaving. Being able to communicate with another car doesn't really make that much of a difference. And it would only work if every car on the road was connected and autonomous, which that's not happening anytime soon. It'll take 40, 50 years for that to happen, which will be on to 6G, 7G by then. We won't be using 5G at that point. I don't know. It's a stupid marketing ploy, in my opinion, but I got to get going. I got to work on some vlogs next, but thank you all for tuning in. It's been fun. It's been real. Appreciate the bits. Appreciate the Twitch Primes. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.